Anderson from Anderson PT and Wellness.
Hey, and this is Beth Ann Fisher from Womb Matters Holistic Physical Therapy.
And we're out of Denver, Colorado. We are filming this today at Firehouse Pilates, also in Denver. It is a wonderful space. Let me just take you on a little tour. So, very awesome.
On the road, or at least online.
All right, so we wanted to talk about this topic because it comes up a lot when we're working with patients in the public health setting. That's what Beth and I do. So really like some simple tips that we can share with you today to help with constipation because it can really make you feel like very crummy.
It can, and we really want to start with, why do we even care? Why should you care if you are constipated? Many of you may feel this way. It's not something that anyone's talking about, which is why Jen and I truly felt inspired to bring it up and start a conversation. And this Facebook Live is just the beginning of the conversation. We have some workshops in the works that will really tend to this piece of your pelvic health. And so we want to start by just saying, why should you care? So Jen, do you have a few thoughts? I have a few, but why don't you share from your perspective why we should care?
Well, so what I see typically is like my patients that have issues with constipation. They're bloated, they're uncomfortable. A lot of times that will lead to repetitive straining, irritation of hemorrhoids. And then if people have prolapse, it can make it even harder to have a bowel movement. I see a lot of constipation with pregnancy too, so it's like all these situations where you're already maybe uncomfortable and you could be worsening the situation by straining. So
makes sense. And you mentioned prolapse. Rectocele, or prolapse of the vaginal wall on the back side, which is also the front side of the anal canal, can actually be caused by straining over decades. So that's something that, you know, if you're always straining, it's not necessarily an okay thing to let slide for years and years at a time. That's something pelvic health physical therapy can help with. The other thing that's important for a lot of the women I see, I do something in addition to pelvic health called Mayan abdominal massage to help with a variety of issues. And one thing about that is that we need hormone balance. We all need hormone balance, especially for women, of estrogen and progesterone and all of the other contributing hormones to our reproductive process. And with constipation, hormone excretion is through the stool. And so if you're not normally getting rid of, let's say, excess estrogen, as might be the case in different scenarios, then that's going to stay in the body and cause problems because you can't rid yourself of those excess hormones. So it's important for a lot of different reasons. And then there was one other thing. Yeah, so in the research, it also talks about stress urinary incontinence, and we know that constipation, because of the way, do we have our friends here?
we do have our friend here.
So here's the pelvic space, and the arrangement, I'll show you this from the side. I talk about this a lot with my patients, and I believe that Jen does too. So we have the bladder, the uterus, for those of you who are female with uterus parts, and the rectum. And this is bladders in the front, rectums in the back. And if you can imagine, this rectum is expanded. This is muscular tissue and it can expand. If there's stool being held in there, it's gonna push forward on the uterus, the vaginal wall, and therefore then on the bladder, and bone in front of it, the pubic symphysis.
So this is all sitting inside the pelvic bowl.
Inside the pelvic bowl, and so that bone isn't going anywhere. That means that bladder gets smashed, and so now we know that constipation can be a contributor to urinary incontinence by virtue of the mechanics and the lack of space when you're constipated in the back.
Right, like so finding like the if people are having a hard time controlling their urine flow, or if they're having a lot of urinary urge, if constipation is occurring at the same time, that sometimes handling the constipation first, I find, can really help then them do a better job of managing their urinary urge or the stressing.
Right. Yeah, so all three of these parts can be impacted by constipation. Vaginal wall, can have a discomfort with intercourse if that's an issue as well. So these all want to be happy parts, and they don't function entirely independently. They're very interconnected, and I think that's the point we want to get across.
Right, like, so Beth Ann always talks about how the rectum, the uterus, and the bladder are all sharing the same neighborhood, and like if your neighbor is encroaching on your space, right? Like how that upsets the balance in the community.
Right.
So if the rectum's really full and pushing on the bladder is gonna get kind of,
literally pissy.
Yeah, get a little mad.
Can happen.
So if you think about it in those kind of terms, it helps it makes sense a little bit more.
So Jen, what's normal? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
What is normal?
What should we be? And I don't like shitting on myself, but no pun intended, maybe pun intended. What should we expect?
Right.
So many of us don't know at this point because we've had problems for so long.
Right. So we were talking earlier, and there's like a little bit of variability when you look at the literature as like what is like normal for bowel movements. But I would say having a type 4, and I'll show you what that means, bowel movement every day is what is considered normal. And so a type 4 bowel movement is smooth, snake-like bowel movement, and that's based off the Bristol scale. And I'll show you real quick. That is the Bristol stool chart. Yes, there is a chart describing stool. Isn't that exciting? You can Google it and take a better look at it.
There are tons of images on that chart.
But you want to have a type 4 bowel movement daily is what I would say the goal is. And if that's not happening, there are certain things that we can share with you that can help.
And contributing to that, the hope is that it would happen within the first 5 or 10 minutes that you sit on the toilet, that you're responding to the urge to go within the first 20 minutes that it comes to you to maybe look for a bathroom, that you're not straining excessively, like really pushing in on your stomach and holding your breath and bearing down to make it happen, and that your pelvic floor is relaxed. We actually have reflexes, and a lot of people don't realize this, but the pelvic floor is supposed to, there's a reflex that causes when stool drops down into the anal canal and the sphincter, causes the pelvic floor to relax and open. And sometimes that's where we get into trouble, is when that reflex isn't working for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here is your pelvic floor, right? This is the bottom of your pelvic floor. So here, if we kind of rotate it forward, here's your pubic bone in the front. You've got your tailbone in the back, and we're looking at the pelvic floor from the bottom, and then your 2 sitting bones here, right? And you can see how these pelvic floor muscles encircle the vaginal area, and so the urethra where the bladder empties, but then also they come around the rectum. So if your pelvic floor muscles are tight, it's not going to allow stool to pass through here easily. So if people have excessively tight pelvic floor muscles, it's going to be really hard for those muscles to relax. And that's a great reason to go work with a pelvic floor physical therapist, because we can teach you how to relax those muscles, and we'll use breathing techniques, stretches. We can even massage these muscles to help you learn to relax these muscles, and to have also like pain with bowel movements, right? That's also an issue. Bowel movements should not be painful. So if they're painful, addressing these muscles and also the consistency of your stool, right? If you're having a really hard bowel movement, that's why we want that type 4 soft bowel movement.
Yeah, I will give you a few more tips and pointers about that at the end and how you can affect the consistency of your stool to make this work better. I think Jen brings up a really good point though. She mentioned a lot of tools that we as physical therapists can use, such as massage and muscle retraining. It's like any other muscles in the body. It's specialized. You definitely want to go to someone who has done pelvic health training in their therapy education, and there are occupational therapists and others that do this too. But it's really working with muscles in the same way that we work with other muscles, reflexes, and connections with the brain and the body. So while it's an intimate topic, it's a universal topic in a lot of ways. It connects to everything. So just want to make that point.
Right.
Cool? Right. So I'm going to speak a little bit on, just a tiny bit, on abdominal contribution to GI health and to stool and bowel movements. And Jen's going to talk a little bit more about the pelvic floor and its contribution. You know, it's interesting because the backside of the abdomen is the spine, and a lot of the GI system is held in place by ligaments that attach to the spine. So spinal alignment is actually really important for GI health. For instance, sitting tall when you eat and not crouching forward, which does a lot of funky things to the pelvis and to the spine, as well as keeps circulation and flow from being optimal in the organs that you're trying to get to digest in the moment. The other thing, I'll show you this. So anatomy is important, and I don't know how much you know about your abdominal anatomy. This is like so brief. In the workshop, we'll go in a little more depth, a lot more depth maybe, but I want to show you, I know I'm just going to show you on my torso. So here's my rib cage, and here's my pelvic floor, kind of the bone. Maybe if you want to hold that up next to me, you can kind of get an idea of what level things are at. Here's the hip bones on the front here. So what happens, I eat food, esophagus, all the way down through the diaphragm. You see why breathing is actually important to this process. Stomach, kind of, opposite. Looking in the camera, opposite. Stomach, then goes into small intestine. And small intestine, you know, we show pelvic floor and all the organs down in there. Small intestine sits on top of all this and over it. So then there's like so many feet up in small intestine, and that's all curled around and transit happens in there. And then right at the lower right part of the kind of pelvic bowl area is something called the ileocecal valve. And that's the point at which the small intestine becomes the large intestine. So there is a valve, and there's a lot that goes on there. And we want the stool to move well through that valve. People can have problems there. And then what happens is the stool, or what will become the stool, goes up the ascending colon, which is the beginning of the large intestine, over transverse colon, down descending colon, and then the sigmoid colon, if anyone's heard of that, is in this lower left area of the abdomen. And that's right before the anal canal and the anal sphincters and all of that to actually release the stool. So, knowing that anatomy, there's a lot going on, and I am not going to get into the physiology of all that right now, but there's a lot of places that things can be challenged with movement. If you have an abdominal scar, you may have some adhesions that make it tricky at a certain point in the GI system to get the stool to move through. And so working with a pelvic health therapist, they work on abdominal stuff too.
Right.
You may need some scar tissue work to address that, or some visceral manipulation. It's called visceral mobilization work. The other thing I just want to touch on quick is the nervous system. So it's kind of a buzz thing, and it rightly so it should be, because we're just discovering so much about the enteric nervous system. Enteric meaning, let's just say GI in general, gastrointestinal. The gut has its own brain. So much so, I always use this statistic. We know now that 95% of the serotonin that's used by the brain is produced in the gut. That really makes me think twice about what I put in my body. not in an extreme way, but how I'm nourishing myself, because serotonin is so important for mental wellness,
Right.
among other things. And so there's so much going on in the gut nervous system.
Right.
And if that system, like our brain, if we're feeling anxious and we use the word upregulated, fight or flight, that affects our GI system. It's not safe to digest and to move stool through the system if we're feeling upregulated, if we're feeling anxious, if we're feeling threat. So we also have ways to help people, let's just use the term downregulate, or find their peaceful nervous system, and that affects gut health too. Sometimes that is the issue, and we work on nervous system regulation through light touch, through movement, through maybe incorporating some yoga, that kind of thing, in order to create a bowel GI system that feels, let's just say, safe or lack of threat to move things through. You cannot digest when you're in fight or flight, which is, I think, why there's, when you're stressed out. So I think that's a lot of why so many of us suffer absorption issues.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so I'll let you take over the pelvic health piece, or the pelvic floor piece. It's all pelvic health. But straining is a big issue, and I'd love for you to share more about how that impacts kind of the release.
So kind of like just bringing the pelvic floor back to it being like a system and part of the enteric system is, okay, here we go again. So my diaphragm sits right here at the bottom of my rib cage. My pelvic floor is down here, right? And then we've got all of my intestines in between. When I take an inhale, my diaphragm pulls down, all of my contents of my abdomen move down, and then my pelvic floor should lengthen a little bit to accommodate that. Then I exhale, my diaphragm moves back up to move air out of my lungs, my pelvic floor should recoil a little bit. So I always think about this kind of like rhythm that should be gently occurring throughout the day, and it's almost like massaging your internal organs. And let's say that you have a tight pelvic floor and you don't get that pelvic floor descent with an inhalation. That's going to kind of change that whole system. You're not going to get good circulation through your muscles, your pelvic floor muscles, your digestive system here, and that's going to affect your ability to be able to digest, to make serotonin so that you can have a happy brain and you can relax. So it's very interesting how all these systems work together, right? And that's the other thing too. When you're in fight or flight, a lot of my patients forget to breathe. Mm-hmm. So we're always working on breathing. So if you have a really tight pelvic floor, one of the things I suggest doing is just practicing some diaphragmatic breathing. So it's like I would say most people have a bowel movement in the morning, right? So if you wake up in the morning, I suggest eating breakfast is very important, right? They call it break fast. Break fast, it wakes up your digestive system. It's like, okay, we're starting the day, right? So you wake up, you have your coffee, you have your breakfast. About 30 minutes later, you should be getting a little bit of an urge to have a bowel movement. Then that's when you don't ignore the urge. Go to the bathroom, and if those pelvic floor muscles are tight, take a little time to just take some nice deep breaths through your diaphragm. So not breathing up here in your rib cage, but belly breathing, and see if you can connect taking that inhalation and feeling like your sit bones move apart, and letting those sit bones move apart, and then that will help facilitate emptying and relaxation of the external sphincter, so emptying for stool. You can also, now people talk about, sometimes you do need to push a little bit to have a bowel movement. Okay, if you're going to need to push to have a bowel movement, do not hold your breath, meaning don't have a Valsalva, which is and trapping all of the air in the intra-abdominal area, because all of that pressure is going to go down on your pelvic floor. And a lot of times when you put a lot of pressure down on the pelvic floor is going to tighten up. So what I recommend doing is as you're gently pushing down and out or sending those pelvic floor muscles down into the basement, I want you to do an exhalation. And that could be like a shh, or sometimes like a lower pitched noise, like gurring. Grr, like send it down low, send it low, down and out. That really helps to eliminate stool. Or if stool is really, if it's really firm and you're struggling, doing like short little pushes down and out, like a oomph, oomph, oomph. And sometimes that really can help to eliminate stool and not do that Valsalva and that stress and strain on those pelvic floor muscles, which will lead to hemorrhoids, and then that causes a lot of pain, and then that can just perpetuate tight pelvic floor muscles. We don't want that.
Makes sense. So when you say Valsalva, is that like when someone closes the airway flap?
Yeah.
So it's like a closed system and there's all this downward pressure. Is that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Anytime you're trapping air in the intra-abdominal, in your abdominal area.
Okay.
Cool.
That. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
There's some debate in our world about what is straining really, and so Jen gives a really good description of that because it can be tricky. Suffice to say, what I hear you saying is long, sustained pushing is probably not the best strategy to use.
Not the best strategy.
Some of these other ways, and we've both been learning, you know, there's a lot to do with pitch.
Yeah.
So this low pitch, and this isn't silliness.
Yeah.
It can be silly, but and if you have little kids, you can play with it if you're like working on a bowel movement.
Right.
But the low pitch sends a signal to the pelvic floor, as we've learned, that to decrease the tone or decrease the tightness. So it's kind of cool that you can use phonation or vocalization to help your pelvic floor.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. And then the other thing I would tell people is, if you are struggling to have a bowel movement, don't stay on the toilet for more than 10 minutes. Try for 10 minutes. If it's not happening, get up, do something else. If the urge returns, then go back and try again. The other thing, squatty potties. They work for a reason. Anytime you try to get your knees slightly higher than your hips, that helps straighten out your rectum. So you don't have to run out and go get a squatty potty. You could simply put like a stool underneath your feet. You could put a stack of books underneath your feet. You could take extra rolls of toilet paper and put them underneath your feet, yoga blocks. But typically what I recommend, something underneath the feet to bring those knees a little bit higher than the hips, and then leaning forward from the waist. So you're resting your forearms or,
Like this kind of?
Yeah.
If my knees were under my forearms. Yeah.
It's hard for us to show you with this camera angle. Actually, I have like a little picture here.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's do the picture.
I can hold. There you go. So if you get those knees a little bit higher than the hips, so typically you probably have to have something under your feet to achieve that, and then she's resting her forearms on her thighs. And then that's gonna give you like the best position to try to have a bowel movement.
Cool. So positioning is definitely important.
Positioning helps. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I can offer another strategy. Sometimes a little bit of external assistance can be helpful in the form of a light abdominal or belly massage. So one that we use a lot in the physical therapy world that's very simple and can be often very effective is what we call the ILE massage. And so I'll stand up, won't see my face, but we'll go back to, here's Beth Ann's rib cage.
Yep.
Here's my pelvic bowl.
Yes.
We follow, as I talk to you about the large intestine, the ascending colon where stool enters from the small intestine, enters down here through the ileocecal valve. So we start in that area, and you can use one hand or two. I like to use one over the other. Start in that area with some circles in a clockwise direction. Just little circles, and my fingers staying in contact with the skin. I'm not sliding my hand. I'm trying to get a little bit deeper, literally toward the organ. So doing a little bit of circle, and you know, different people might do this a little bit differently, and that's fine. But you want to do these little circles following the path of the colon, spending a little bit of time in each place until you hit the rib cage here. You don't want to be right up under the rib cage because the transverse colon kind of hangs a little bit like a banner. But doing those same circles across the transverse colon, it's very important that you go right to left with this, because left to right, we think, can send the brain tricky signaling and back us up further. It just doesn't follow the natural flow, shall we say. We'll keep it simple for now in our explanation. And then I go to the other side, and once we hit the other edge of the rib cage, we start going down. Same with the little circles. All the way down, here's my hip bone. You can go down into that space where the sigmoid colon is. You can spend a little extra time there, especially if you get constipated. If you aren't able to heed those signals initially to release stool, often stool will back up into the sigmoid colon again. So now you've got stool coming down from the top, stool backed up from the bottom. So spending a little bit of extra time on that, down in that spot. You can do circles, and you can do a little bit of pumping in and out. That can be helpful. You know, and it's great to do this, like Jen said, morning routine, eat your breakfast. Before you eat breakfast, having a nice big glass of room temperature water or even warm water can sometimes be helpful. Right. Then before or after breakfast, doing the massage. I wouldn't recommend doing it right after breakfast if you don't do it before, because it can be a little bit like pressury. Or even doing it at night. Some people do it at night, and it seems to help prime the pump, so to speak, for the morning bowel movement. Yeah. So one simple little tool. And then do you usually teach like to repeat that going on the right side over and down, like for about like a few minutes or so? Yeah. Like, I mean, trying to spend time is precious. Time is more important than money at this point in life in our culture. At least 3 minutes, but ideally 5. And if you're really constipated, like up to 10 minutes. Okay. Think of a way to provide some meaning to yourself around it. That actually, I know it sounds kind of silly and out there, but if you can do something like a bit of meditation, or what I like to call body inquiry or exploration, and just, you know, put on some nice music, like it can be like a touch meditation for yourself, and it can be really responsive and reflective. So if you have to do it, why not try to make it meaningful and helpful? And then it can also help you relax. When you get into playful and imaginative space, it's good for your brain and it's good for your enteric gut. So just, you know, play with it. It's interesting, because whenever I massage my belly, I always feel like it feels so good. And then one of my patients was like, yeah, dogs really have it. They know what they're talking about, right? Because your dogs always want a belly rub. And I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way. But yeah, that's awesome. It can actually be really relaxing. I hope you let me use that with my patients. To rub your belly, and then you're like making the serotonin, and it's going to travel up your vagus nerve and go to your brain. It's all good stuff. But I think it's important to note that you're moving stool with that a little bit, like you're helping to prime the pump. You're also improving your circulation. There's a lot of arteries, you know, like absorption happens, and this is the place where your body separates the nutrients from the food, from the toxin that it wants to get out. And so circulation is really important. And when we have these slumped postures and we sit at computers all day and we're not moving and rotating and doing all of these things that maybe we used to do more 100 years ago, we don't have great circulation to our gut all the time, and it makes a big difference. So simple things can make a big difference. And there's like evidence that like yoga can really help with constipation. And again, it's like the twisting moves in yoga, stretching out the hip flexors, again, just like kind of opening up this abdominal space. That there's improved blood flow so that we can digest our food and then eliminate what we don't need of that food, Can I mention one other thing? I forgot to mention this earlier, and for those of you that are going to physical therapy or maybe have been and have low back pain, in women, the research is actually showing a high correlation between GI symptoms and low back pain. That doesn't mean that all of your low back pain is GI driven, but seeing a pelvic health PT that has a little bit in that, if your symptoms aren't resolving with a typical course of chiropractic or massage therapy or PT, you know, there could be something to that if you're constipated, because those nerves innervate muscle and GI stuff. Some of them have dual purpose. So I just want to throw that out.
I guess, and then one other thing I'd like to add too is that I have a lot of patients that are like, I'm eating really healthy, I'm having all these fruits and vegetables and everything, but I'm still constipated. And I'm like, well, what's your water intake like? And they're like, oh, I don't drink that much water. Well, okay, so fiber, which is fruits and vegetables, right, grains, absorb a ton of water. And so if you're not taking in enough water and taking in all this fiber, you can actually kind of constipate yourself. Which, so it's like, so make sure that you're drinking plenty of water. And the way you can know that, like, if you're well hydrated, your urine should be like a straw color, like a light yellow. It doesn't have to be clear. But making sure that you're getting it plenty of water with a healthy diet, including fruits and vegetables, will help with constipation as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Such a good point. We are made of water. We need water.
We need water. Drink your water.
We need water. Do you have any other general tips that you want to offer people since you got onto the tip train?
No? Not right now?
Okay.
You got anything you want to add?
You know, I just don't want to miss the importance while we're on the more global stuff of sleep. So you're not sleeping well. Sleep is when rest, restore, digest, blah, 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 happy gut stuff actually happens a lot.
That makes sense.
If you're not sleeping well, which is one of the big diseases of our culture at this point, we've got to find a way to help you sleep. That's like the first thing often, even with pelvic health PT, that we often ask people, how are you sleeping? Because your body can't heal well if you're not in that mode of rest, digest, restore. So I just want to throw out there, if your sleep habits are kind of funky, you're not getting at least, let's just say 7 hours a night, it's something to consider.
I think it totally makes sense, right? Like, we always talk about, like, if you're not sleeping, that kind of lowers your resiliency level. So if something happens, right, that stresses you out, then you're more anxious because you're already fatigued. And then you're gonna start living in that sympathetic state where you're not really breathing well, you're not in rest. It's harder to go into rest and digest, and then this whole cycle starts again, and yeah.
Cool.
I know. It's a thing. We are all crazy.
Cool.
We need to sleep and drink water and digest our food and poop.
Yeah. These are the fundamentals.
These are the fundamentals. Getting back to basics, right?
We're starting the conversation. So, are we ready to conclude?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Jen, where can people find you?
So,
in person and online.
You can find me at andersonptwellness.com. That links to my email address, and you can shoot me a message if you have any questions. If you have any ideas for topics you want us to cover in the future, you could also leave that in the comments box under the Facebook Live. And then my office is in Edgewater, Colorado. So if you're in the neighborhood, come and see me. I'd love to help you.
And we forgot to mention, because we are PTs, that movement is an excellent strategy for constipation.
Right.
So you teach a movement class.
I do teach a movement class. Actually, at Firehouse Pilates, I teach booty yoga at 7 o'clock on Tuesday nights, and then also at 10:30 a.m. on Wednesdays. Booty yoga is a blend of plyometrics, tribal dance, and yoga. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, you should join us because
it's super fun.
It's super fun.
I've done it with Jen, and she's like, having a PT who can modify things and help you like have success in a class is just so great, and Jen is really good at that.
Yes.
So I recommend it.
So Beth Ann, how can I find you?
Well, you know where my office is.
I do.
Jen and I actually are office mates at a space in Edgewater, and so I practice in the same location. And if you don't know where Edgewater is, it's in Northwest Denver. It's this tiny, sweet little town. So that's where I do my one-on-one practice. I teach a once-a-month class right now called Pelvic Flow, which is an original creation that is mind, body, soul connected, helping you to connect to your pelvis in a really sort of interwoven way.
Yes, and it's awesome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then because Jen and I actually synergize a lot and collaborate on patients because I deal with some of this abdominal stuff. We both deal with both, but we find it, our patients can have some particularly beautiful success when we're able to collaborate, and
Right.
it's a beautiful thing. And so we have a combo package. If you mention that you heard this here, we have a combo pack which is 2 sessions with Jen, 2 sessions with myself, and all of that over a span of however we decide you need it, for $497, which is a deal for 2 doctors of physical therapy who specialize in this work to help you address your issues.
Yeah.
So come check us out. And I forgot to tell you, you can find me online at wombmatters.com. Womb like uterus, WOMBMATTERS. Use the contact form, on this Facebook Live. Feel free to comment below. And please use our comment forms and tell us, especially our contact forms. Sorry, I'm saying the wrong thing.
That's okay.
If you want to know about future offerings that we have some workshops in the works. We are going to do a live Conquering Constipation, likely this fall, and it will be packed. You thought this was packed? That will be packed, and it will be fun, and it will be experiential. I know it's a sensitive topic, but we need to talk about it because we just don't need to live with this the way it is.
Right.
We shouldn't. Our pelvic health as more elderly women later depends on it. We need to address these things now so that we can have vitality in the future.
Great. So if you have any other topics that you'd like us to cover, feel free to leave those ideas in the comments box. And then we'll see you guys later. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for
watching.
joining us.
Have a great night, guys. Bye.
Bye.